It's never about how you start, but it's always about where you finish. That's the story of UFC up-and-coming star Jack Della Maddalena. Even though he's nowhere near done with MMA, it's time we recall that the beginning of his career wasn't exactly smooth sailing, but since then, he's gotten back up and is hanging on to his 11-fight win streak. Here's why everyone needs to keep an eye out for Maddalena. First up, his big comeback. 6 years is a long time, right? That's how long it took for Maddalena to reach the top. Let's look at one of the first fights that got him here. Back in April 2017, Maddalena came head-to-head with Australian fighter Glenn Pettigrew. Despite his losing streak back then, Maddalena was able to stop Pettigrew by the second round. After his loss against Maddalena, Pettigrew actually came to win 4 straight matches. And get this, one of those wins was against none other than Maddalena's brother, Josh. Everyone knew that it wouldn't be long until we saw Maddalena and Pettigrew in the ring again, and this time, he even had to avenge his brother. When the two finally had their rematch, both Maddalena and Pettigrew had quite a cautious approach. Pettigrew tried to keep the upper hand by landing a few proper shots, and at some point, he was able to take Maddalena down at the end of the first round. But everything changed as soon as the bells rang for round 2. Not even 2 minutes of fighting, and Pettigrew was knocked to the edge of the cage. Maddalena took advantage of that, and landed a slick 1-2 combination which sent Pettigrew falling to the canvas. Maddalena won the fight by TKO, and of course, he avenged his brother in the most dramatic way possible. Next, we have Maddalena's pro debut. But let's go a little further back, shall we? Maddalena made his pro debut back in March 2016, when he faced the British fighter Alden Bates. At this point, Bates had already won both of his first pro fights, and both by TKO. Now that's a tough fight for anyone, but it was much harder on Maddalena, who lost to Bates on the first and third round by TKO, leaving him quite double-minded about his career. But losses can be the greatest motivation for a fighter's career, and that's what Maddalena has proved. So, after that avenging his brother fight against Pettigrew, Maddalena decided to fight Bates again too. This time, the stakes were much higher. After all, MMA welterweight championship was on the line. Thankfully for Maddalena, he wasn't that new fighter in town anymore. His fight IQ had reached a whole new level, and it didn't take him long to beat down Bates. He closed the distance between them and took a beautiful short right hook that put Bates out in the very first round. And now, for coming to the Contender Series. Now that Maddalena had gotten everything on the regional scale, it was time to head to the octagon, but before he could get down there, he had to face Ang Lusa during Dana White's Contender Series. It's super cool that Maddalena won a unanimous decision, which obviously proved that this guy had what it takes to fight amongst some of the best players in the game. We even remember what UFC commentator Michael Bisping said about Maddalena's performance in the Contender Series. He said that if anyone is going to come to the UFC to have a great career, then they need to handle adversity like that. Turns out, Maddalena passed the test of resilience with flying colors. And then we have the Octagon debut. Now comes the Octagon. In January 2022, Maddalena fought against Peter Rodriguez at UFC 270, even though his original opponent was Warlley Alves. Long story short, Alves pulled out and Rodriguez stepped in his place. When talking to several commentators before the fight, Maddalena said that he's super nervous about fighting in the octagon, but when he stepped inside the ring, fighting came to Maddalena like rain from the sky. He was a complete natural in there, and he even stopped Rodriguez in less than 3 minutes into the first round. And now, there's no right or wrong way. By now, you've probably got enough reason to keep your eyes on Maddalena and his smashing career right now, but according to the man himself, there's no right or wrong way to make a UFC career. Maddalena isn't about taking things slow. When we look at other fighters like Sean O'Malley, we hear them talk about the money they earn versus the competition they face. O'Malley said in an interview that it doesn't make sense to him to fight against top-rated contenders without getting more bank. But hey, that's not what Maddalena is thinking about. In an interview with MMA Fighting, Maddalena said that there are many different routes that one can take to the same destination. Everyone's trying to get to the top. Some take a smart route and others don't. Maddalena is all about being competitive and fighting the best opponent that he possibly can. Even though he's trying to let things fall into place naturally, he's still going to choose the toughest fight that he can get. Next, we have storming through his division. After his insane takedown of Rodriguez during the Octagon debut, Maddalena had a draw against the Russian specialist Ramazan Emeev at UFC 275. Now, anyone who watches UFC knows that Emeev had the upper hand in this fight. He has much more experience than Maddalena, both inside and outside the UFC. But that's the thing about Maddalena. He's always looking for better competition. There's no denying that Maddalena wants to get some cash for his fights, but he also wants to storm through his division as soon as possible. He's not looking at anything else. His eyes are fixed on the top spot. Turns out that the UFC is starting to put some faith in Maddalena's potential too. His second appearance in the series is now scheduled as a pay-per-view opener. That's not the kind of recognition that Maddalena was looking for, but seeing his name on that card is a huge deal. He said he's thrilled about the UFC finally recognizing him, but it still doesn't change a lot for him personally. Maddalena's got a lot of his friends coming to Singapore to support him, so he's just glad they won't have to get up super early to watch the fight. Apart from that part, being on the pay-per-view card doesn't mean anything to him. For Maddalena, it's all about going out there and putting on a show that people remember. And now, he's ready to fight everyone. Maddalena said that he's ready for anything that Emeev will throw at him now. He knows that the Russian Sambo specialist will try and find an opportunity to grapple, but he's prepared for everything. Maddalena also added that he's ready to fight all the top contenders and beat them all down. He's looking forward to fighting all styles, so fighting a Russian Sambo champion is definitely pretty cool for him. Other fighters might want to stay protected in the game and fight people who are good for their style, but Maddalena isn't about that playing it safe life. Instead, he's taking more of a throw whatever you got at me kind of approach, and it's safe to say that we are loving it. Next, in other news, we have Maheshate's big debut. Let's not forget that UFC 275 also marks the promotional debut of a 22-year-old Chinese lightweight champion, Hasier Maheshate. He got his spot on the ring by taking down the previously undefeated Achilles Estremadura last season. Maheshate has got a unique body frame for the lightweight division, but that means he needs to work on adding some functional mass and upper body strength. We're excited to see where this newcomer is headed, especially now that he's got 6 straight victories under his belt. We've got our hopes high for Maheshate. Fighting against Steve Garcia shouldn't be a big deal because he's already won a similar assignment in Las Vegas earlier. If he's able to put on the same type of show at UFC 275, then we're sure the newcomer will gather some more attention before his sophomore appearance at the Octagon. So what the heck happened during Prochazka vs. Teixeira? Some think that Yuri Prochazka and Glover Teixeira put on one of the best fights this year at the UFC 275, but Anthony Smith begs to differ. The light heavyweight contender said that none of them gave their best inside the ring. There was a back and forth war going on between the two before Prochazka pulled an improbable submission to knock Teixeira down in the 5th round. Still, Smith thought that there were so many opportunities to do better in the fight. In an interview, Smith said that he thinks both of them performed their worst at the same time. He said that Teixeira looked a little old because it didn't look like the same guy in the ring who he and Santos once fought. Smith concluded that they both made terrible decisions throughout the fight and that he didn't expect the title fight to go down in vain like that. And finally, Joanne Jędrzejczyk is sticking around. Okay, here's some awesome news. If you were bummed about seeing Joanne Jędrzejczyk for the last time at UFC 275, then we're about to turn your frown upside down. Apologies for the cliche dialogue, but we can't control our excitement to announce that the former strawweight champion has decided to stick around in the UFC. Turns out that even though she has decided to retire after her knockout loss to Zhang Weili, she's hoping to return as an MMA manager. And that's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.